I've shared this with you, I'm almost certain, but it comes back to my mind. And so, I remember going to confession for the first year or two as a new Catholic. Kimberly wasn't even a Catholic yet. I remember coming home and realizing that Michael and Gabriel were at each other's throats and acting like anything but archangels. And she said, "You're going to have to deal with your sons." And I'm like, "They're our sons." She's like,
Not today.
"Not anymore," And I'm like, "Okay." And I'm looking at them and they're always just blaming each other. And so at the end of dinner, and I'd just been to confession, I think the day before, I announced that tomorrow will be a day of Jubilee.
I just want to butt in here and say, I have learned that from you, and I've implemented it several times.
Oh.
And I'm so grateful for it. And I want us to talk about it because I want parents to do it, how I did it recently. And I say, anything you've done wrong, and then I'll offer some absurd example. You've stolen someone's bike, set it on fire. You've stolen things from a store. You tell me today, there's no punishment, and I completely forgive you. You just have to come to me today at any point. It has been such a blessing. So I'm so grateful for that, Scott. Thank you.
I announced it was on a whim. It was sort of like an impulse that felt right, and so I announced it. I hadn't.
So how did you do it?
I just said, tomorrow's a day of Jubilee. And we were already done with dinner, and I just said, so, and Kimberly's looking at me like, what? Check with me first, And so I explained the year of Jubilee in Leviticus 25, all debts are forgiven. You go back to the inheritance of your family. So I said, tomorrow, no matter what you've done, if you come clean, you will go unpunished. And the boys are like, "Oh, you're right," And Kimberly's like, no, no, they can't. And so I just said, trust me. And she did. And the next day in the morning,
did you remind them again? Or?
No, I didn't need to. No. I mean, I don't think I did.
You made it clear.
No, when I tucked them into bed, I did. Or they reminded me.
I think one of the reasons I said if you've stolen a bike and set it on fire is I just want transparency with my kids. I don't want them to hide their lives from me.
Right.
That's my greatest fear. Just please be honest. I love you. I want to know all of you. So, and I don't want them to think, well, they can bring some of the sins, but not the deeply shameful ones. Is there a way you tried to do that when you were like, anything you've done, come to me?
Yeah, I mean, it was what they had done to each other that I was focusing on. And it turned out the next morning when my firstborn went through his list, it was like, okay, that's longer than I expected. That's a little worse than I thought, And so he braced himself for the punishment, What did Archbishop Fulton Sheen once say? It's not called rearing children for nothing. And so I said, come over here. And he said, you promised. And I'm like, I know, but let's come over here and let's pray. And he was thinking, is that where it starts? I'm like, no, that's all it is. And so I prayed, and then I led him in prayer, and he prayed.
And what did you remember?
I just prayed extemporaneously. I just still a new convert. So I thanked God for Michael's honesty. I thanked him for the opportunity, and I thanked him for his mercy, his forgiveness. And I just said, I want him to know that I forgive him as you have forgiven me.
That's beautiful.
And I said, and then as he's walking backwards, like, one thing, I said, okay, I will ask you, what could you do to undo what you've done to your little brother?
Yeah, and that's on you.
Yeah, and at that point, his eyes, he knew.
Yeah.
And by lunch, whatever the things, I think he hit a Frisbee or a baseball or a bat or a glove or the G.I. Joes or whatever it was, they were back, after lunch, his little brother came in. And I mean, I don't have a good memory, but if my memory serves.
Sorry, how old were they at the time? How old were they at the time for perspective?
So let me think. I came into the church in 86. This was probably 86 or 87. So they were like 7 and 5.
Okay.
I mean, I've done
the age of reason,
I've done this recently. Like my oldest is 15.
Yeah.
But it's... Yeah. I just want to emphasize this to everybody watching. This is a beautiful thing.
I mean, at dinner, after Gabriel had come in and gone through his list, which was... It seemed twice as long as his brothers. And I'm like, you're lucky to be alive, little guy, Yeah. And at dinner, Kimberly was looking at me like I was Merlin the magician. What kind of wand did you wave, to get them back? And I just told her, I said, I fathered them like God fathers me through Father so-and-so when I go to confession.
You don't get scolded. You don't get...
and I forgot about that for a year. I just did. It didn't come up again for quite a while. Kimberly told me years later, you gave me all of those books, all of these articles, all of these arguments in favor of the Catholic Church. She said, seeing what a difference it made in our home was more convincing than all of the arguments, Yeah. And so we've probably implemented a day of Jubilee, maybe south of 100, but probably north.
Yeah.
And after a few years, the kids caught on and they could ask for a day of Jubilee. And no priest has ever refused to me absolution. And so I've never refused to them a day of Jubilee. And I got to tell you, in at least one case, we averted a catastrophe that had already begun. But because it was still in the early stages, we were able to dig up a deadly weed that had already begun to take root, but only after like a month.
No, because when you go to confession, you don't need someone to tell you, don't you know that what you did was wrong? No, that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
So I've done this before, and I've had one of my children come up in tears because they stole something. This is a long time ago, or they've lied to me, and this particular child said, I don't even know why I lied. And I'm just hugging them, like, thank you so much. Like, I just love you. Like, I don't want there to be exiles within you. I want to know every bit of you. I want to know all of you. It's a great thing, I think, for parents to do.
Yeah, and
because you want your
I've
kids
heard from
hard,
others,
don't you?
You do, it's messy. It's very messy. I just alluded to a situation that I can't go into the details because every family has dysfunction, every child, every parent, and we're just all wounded healers. We're just kind of limping along towards heaven as sojourners, as pilgrims. But there was one situation that took close to a year. I don't remember for sure. My memory is just getting spottier. But I would go and be with this child, in early teens, and she would say, I don't want to spend time with you or anybody. And I know, but I've got a lot of other things, but this is so much more important than all the other things. Just being with you. I have nothing to say. I said, you don't have to say anything. I feel like I'm crawling into your cave where it's just totally dark. It's pitch black. But this is where I'm supposed to be. You're the one I'm supposed to be with. This isn't wasting a single minute. And naturally, I'm running through the things that I've got to get to. But it was just so clear to me as I was praying for her that this is the thing. And it happened again twice that week and then 3 times the next week. I don't remember exactly. But looking back on that, the bond that we have today is due to a lot of things, but in large part to the fact that I convinced her and myself I wasn't wasting a single hour, even though it was probably over the course of months more than 20 hours. And there have been other kids that you just spend time with, even though you don't have the words to say. You're just looking, and I tell them I feel like so inadequate. As a father, I feel like a failure, but we'll get through this.
I got some parenting advice I'd like you to give me and all of our parents listening. These are beautiful stories, and in a way they're stories of how the Lord led you to do this beautiful thing, but how, as a father whose children are grown, do you deal with failures? And not failures that you can say, well, but then they end up, but like we all fall short, and we're all, what do you do with those failures that maybe even you see still affecting your children today? I don't want to assume that you.
Of course, I
see
do.
What I mean?
Yeah, of course I do. I mean, I've said it before. Nothing has frustrated me more than fathering. Nothing has made me feel like a failure more than fathering. At every stage, and it's one kid at a time, and it's 1 year at a time, and you never stop parenting. You never stop praying. You never stop feeling inadequate. And so what do I do? Well, there are 101 tools on my belt, and none of them are like the wand that you wave and fix everything. Yes. But I think the one thing I have learned to do, I learned it before the Catholic faith, before entering the church. I learned it from my older brother, and that was to apologize fully, freely, sincerely. It's like make friends with your accuser before he drags you to court. I mean, Jesus wasn't kidding. If you can apologize for whatever you've done wrong, even if it's only 1/10 of what has been done wrong, even if the other person, the perpetrator, did much more to you, you can at least extend the olive branch and try to reconcile, you know. And so what I have done, and my kids I think will vouch for this, I've apologized to them many, many, many times. Yeah. And I tell them, I love you. I would lop off a limb for you if it would help. It wouldn't help at all.
So please don't.
And I said, y'all didn't come with manuals. You know, it isn't, you know, on the care and feeding of Michael, Gabriel, Hannah, Jeremiah, Joseph, and David. They've turned out better than I deserve, you know.
Hey, thank you so much for watching. Before you go, do us a favor, leave a comment, let us know what you thought of the video, like, and subscribe.